Hello everyone, this is Rick and welcome to Astral Club. This episode should be a very interesting one. It's Astral School Trip to Hell. Here's your warning: if you have a very sensitive disposition and you're easily frightened, maybe go to see one of my other videos. Okay, let's go on. Before I get started, I want to thank a new patron. Heather Kirilova is an astral master, and I am very grateful for her support. If you would like to join Heather as a supporter of this channel on Patreon, there will be a link in the description, and you'll get things like early videos on Tuesday, and you can email me directly, and I can answer questions, and you can offer comments, and we can talk back and forth a little bit easier. Okay, let's get started. This occurred last night. I was in a hotel room finishing up a very long week on the road, visiting a number of customers. It's part of my job. And I settled in for the night, and I left my body and found myself very quickly drawn to the Astral Guide School classroom. And as soon as I arrived, the instructor got started. The first thing he did was ask how many people have spent some time and are pretty familiar with the lower astral. Well, my hand darted up right away, and the monk seated next to me also indicated that he had spent time there as well. But there was no one else. I was looking around thinking to myself, where did you guys go? I mean, how did you get into this class? I was thinking, are they the equivalent of rich kids who knew somebody to get in? I don't know. Anyway, the instructor just noted that and said, as he was looking at myself and the monk, where we're going to be going will make the lower astral look like a day at Disney World. So that kind of set the tone for the class right away. And I wasn't personally aware. I was curious, what could be worse than what I've seen in the lower astral? Well, he started talking about something called the sub-lower astral. This is the place where the most recalcitrant, the most unrepentant, the most deeply, deeply degraded souls go, who refuse to reincarnate and have committed numerous anti-human atrocities and show no remorse whatsoever. The subastral is also a certain type of graveyard, if you think about it, because remember, we've talked about the mortality of the astral body. I mean, just like the physical body, the astral body has a lifespan. When the physical body dies, the astral body is cut off from its nourishing force. Now, it can take quite a long time to die, depending on the vitality and the power of the individual, sometimes just the willpower. It can go another 100 years, and in some cases, a lot longer than that. But at some point, unless you go to the mental plane or another more advanced plane, or you reincarnate, your astral body starts to disintegrate, much like your physical body did years before. So normally you're faced with a choice, and the vast majority of souls do one thing or the other. Of course, there's exceptions like the master, but we know all about that type of a leech situation, and that's not a good long-term strategy, certainly not a positive one. At any rate, these souls that refuse to reincarnate and don't repent or anything else of all the evil that they've done end up sinking to this lower astral. And after a certain amount of time, as their astral body just disintegrates, their soul doesn't die because it can't die. It's an eternal spark, but essentially the soul falls into a certain type of torpor, some sort of a deep coma, perhaps you can describe that as. And it just it ceases to learn and to operate as an intelligent being. So this subastral, which quite frankly to me sounds like the best realistic version of hell that I've ever heard of, and perhaps the Judeo-Christian Islamic version of hell is perhaps some sort of memories in one way or another of this sub-astral plane, this place of darkness and deepest despair. And that's where the class was going to be going. Uh, the instructor said that we should all stick together and stay, with him, and he would guide us through this particular area. I kind of wondered to myself, what was this all about? I mean, what was the purpose? Perhaps, I don't know, maybe just to expose the rest of the class to what this type of stuff was like, just how far or how low a soul could sink. It all reminded me of a class trip I took in high school. And I remember it was a bunch of college prep kids, and we all dressed up. We were supposed to dress up, and we wore suits. The girls wore dresses, and they took us to the local prison. And they had everyone locked up in their cells. And as we were walking through, it very much impressed me in the sense that it appeared to be a human zoo that we were walking through, looking at the exhibits. It was a very odd experience. It was especially tough for the girls because these guys seeing these young girls in these dresses, they got all kinds of comments thrown at them, and I certainly didn't envy them during that trip. But I mean, I suppose it did expose us to a realm that we didn't really know existed as a bunch of middle class kids from public school. So I figured, well, maybe this is the same type of thing from an astral standpoint. But I figured I'll figure out what I'm going to do once I get there. After the instructor gave us some more warnings and some more rules of the road type of thing, I blanked out at least, and then I reappeared along with the rest of the class in this huge circular chamber. It was dark with the type of physical darkness that is more the absence of any possibility of light, love, hope. It was almost a palatable type of darkness. It was like evil that was made manifest into something into the air. It was a rough chamber. There was stalactites and stalagmites on the floor and the ceiling, like it was a rough-hewn type of huge central circle. And around the radius or the circumference rather, of the circle, there was a series of dark caves, which looked anything but inviting. So, once again, the instructor said, follow me. And he had a light source that he had. I guess it was basically in the form of a lantern. Or at least that's how I saw it. And he started leading the class down one particular tunnel. Now, I'm not a big fan of tourist groups, nor am I one who likes to be led around with a crowd of people in an interesting area. Because what I find is you don't really get the true flavor of a place. Because you got all these people and they're all together and you know they're influencing the people, the wildlife, and what have you. You're not really getting a true sense of what this strange destination is actually like for the people that live there. So I'm much more likely, especially in situations like this, just to kind of go my own way quietly so that I could check out for myself what really is going on. So I kind of stayed to the back of the group. And as everyone went into one particular tunnel, I put on my dark robe, my dark monk robe, that where the robe hangs down low off my face, and my staff. I find that very few beings want to mess with you when you're dressed like that. And it's worked quite a bit for me in the past. So I picked another passageway to walk down. As I entered one of the holes, immediately I was confronted by waves of fear, hatred, hopelessness, sorrow, anger. All of this hit me like it was a physical blow after blow after blow. Perhaps I should have turned around and tried to find the group, but I wanted to push through and see more about what's going on down here. As I walked, I saw things on the floor that might have once been human skittering away from me. I heard squeaking and squealing noises coming off to the side. And I started thinking to myself, are there rats down here? And then I started thinking, it's probably something worse than rats. I had to step over a few bodies that were lying on the floor that looked like they had been partially devoured by something. I continued to walk, and I noticed that the walls appeared to be spattered with substances that might have been blood or other types of gore. I have no idea. Sometimes it was black, sometimes it appeared to be a deep red. As I walked further down the hall, I noticed off on the right side in a small room there was a few groups of beings that were beating on another being and tearing at its arms and limbs. I think they were trying to pull them off. My first impulse was to assist this individual, but as I was watching, I heard the one being attacked, cackling in some sort of an insane laughter. And I decided, I think I'm just going to keep on walking and stay away from this altogether. There was also quite a bit of, what's the word I can use? What appeared to be human copulation going on another side room. But it was a mockery of the beauty of that act. And it was interspersed with violence, with blades and flame and suffering. There was some beings that were fastened to walls. I couldn't fathom the degradation that I was seeing here before me. I can't get into more detail. If I do, I think I'd be banned by YouTube, or they definitely would make this a mature video or what have you. But what really got me is as I walked a little bit further along, and right before I decided I was going to turn around, I ran into an old acquaintance, I suppose you could say. It was crouching in one of the very shallow antechambers. And as I walked by, it sniffed the air. And then it said this to me. So, you have come once again. Well, when I heard that in my head, and that was my best imitation of it, I jumped a little bit in fright and I turned and I saw something that looked like a large black decaying toad. Um, I think it used to be human too at one point because there was still some vague humanity to it. Um, Unconsciously, because I'm used to doing this in the astral, I extended my astral being so that I could probe and establish telepathic contact with this thing. And I did it quite by accident. It was just something you do, like breathe. And instantly it came to me that this was the thing that I found in that old Philadelphia prison that I featured in my video, Imprisoned by an Angel. I'll have a link to that in the description in case you want to listen to that again. And that shock came to me because as I stared at this thing, it you could see the pure hatred in its eyes. It wanted to attack me, but it had become so weakened and so degraded. It was close to astral death, where its soul would go into a type of coma, if you will, that it couldn't bring itself to attack me, but it wanted to. It wanted to, like a vicious dog that was on a chain where its prey was just out of its reach. So I looked at it and I said, "It's been a while." I said, "Is there anything that I can do to help you?" Now the hatred and the sarcasm got extremely deep. And it said to me, "No want your help." Well, that kind of scared the heck out of me. But at the same time, my consciousness was still attached to this thing. And before I could withdraw it back, I saw its life again in a much more detail than I had seen before when I was in the prison in Philadelphia. This creature had been in the prison and had died there. It had been convicted of murder, but that was just a careless bar fight. Its true evil had never been discovered. And in that hellish moment, I was there when it was doing its horrible deeds in its life. What it would do is it would walk the streets of Philadelphia back in the mid 19th century, and it would find orphans living on the street or young black children, and it would tempt them with sweets, and it would say, "Oh, I've got more at my home and you could make some money. I've got some work in my basement." He would then take these orphans or these young black children and take them to his house where he would commit horrible acts to them as they were chained to they had huge chains on them in his basement. It was awful. And once again, I won't get into detail. Keep in mind, many people complain about the police today, but if children go missing, there's always some sort of a search for them. Unfortunately, back then, orphans or young black children, nobody cared. Nobody cared. If they went missing, who cares? Black families most of the time probably didn't even go to the police because the police wouldn't bother. So no one came looking for these poor kids. And when they finally, blessedly, died, he would put them in sacks. And then he had this horse-drawn cart. He'd put them in the cart in the dark, and then he'd have vegetables or or household type trade goods. He'd pile on top of them, and then he'd take them outside of the streets of Philadelphia. No one would look twice at him. This was just a common sight. Nothing to see here. Just a vegetable or some sort of a fruit trader or odds and ends taking his wares to market somewhere. Nothing to remark upon. Sometime he'd take them a little bit out of the city, which is a little bit further away, but not as far as it is today, where somewhere to the woods where he could bury them. Or sometimes he'd just dump them in the river. You know, nobody cared. When these bodies were found, it was just, oh, it's just an orphan, or oh, it's a young black child, who cares? And he did this for years, and no one ever found out. It wasn't until he was arrested for that killing in a bar fight where he, stabbed some guy to death that he was in a fight with. Anyway, I was there, standing next to him as he did these things, and the hell for me was, I was just seeing the past. There was nothing I could do to intercede. These events had happened, and now I was witnessing this hell on earth. So when I got back to my senses and I pulled myself back inside again, I ran. I just ran. And I could hear him with a weird croaking laugh behind me. And I thought to myself, you rot down here. And I had absolutely no pity or anything else in my soul for this thing. And I'm glad it's going to fall into some sort of a deep coma and hopefully never travel or never trouble this earth or universe again. Well, I managed to get back to the circle just as the rest of the team was coming out of the other tunnel. The professor took a look at me and knew something had been wrong, but I don't think he noticed that I wasn't with the group at the time. So we all just disappeared. They went where they went. I went back to my hotel room. And this is a little embarrassing to admit, but as soon as I returned to my body, I ran into the bathroom and I vomited up whatever dinner I had left from the night before, thinking about the obscenities that I had seen in this sub-lower astral, this true hell that exists, that these ultimately degraded souls sink to. So I don't know if I learned whatever lesson they wanted me to learn, but it certainly was something that I really don't intend to repeat. Well, I hope you liked that video, if that's the best word for it. Share it with those of like mind. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I enjoy your questions and comments. If you want to support Astral Club on Patreon, there will be a link in the description. And as always, I'm Rick, and I will see you on the astral plane.